Rita, do you have a question?
Are you getting the feedback, or do you want me to start?
No, you're great. The other version of you disappeared, and we're with just one of you.
Could you make this one disappear too?
No, I refuse.
Okay.
Around the clock. One of the major supply shortages, which have pushed prices up 5.4%. Are we ready to start, Will?
Give me one, well, actually like 10 more seconds.
Okay.
I am getting some feedback from your side, Chuck.
Oh, really?
Is there a TV on or?
Yeah. Okay. Is that better?
I think so.
We'll have to wait and see who shows up. We'll give it a little time here.
Well, whenever you guys are ready for me to read the pre-meeting talking points, I see Marcus is here and folks from Village Supermarkets and Colleen are all here. So
okay. Just give it a couple more minutes. We'll see if we're getting people are signing on. Go ahead, Will. Why don't you?
Well, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining CB8 for one of our virtual committee meetings, we're excited to have you here. You'll notice that you're muted, and you're going to stay muted throughout the meeting except for whenever the committee co-chairs Chuck and Craig call on you. If you would like to participate in the meeting following any presentations or discussions, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who wish to speak by looking at the participants list and finding people who have raised their hand. So if you would like to participate, go to the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and press the raise hand button there. It's not the wave or the thumbs up, those will disappear. Only press the raise hand button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. Now, if you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And be on the lookout for a prompt after the co-chairs call on you that will ask you to confirm unmuting. If you're having any problems finding the raise hand button, you can always chat me for technical support. But I will warn that the chat is not for sharing opinions or questions. Those chats will never be seen by the co-chairs. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you may find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you and we may miss you. So chat me if you have any problems. I'm here to help. With that, I'll pass it back over to Chuck and Craig, and they can get the meeting started.
Hey, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Will. A second here. Yeah, sorry. I'd like to welcome everyone to the October meeting, the Transportation Committee of Community Board 8. I'm Chuck Warren, one of the co-chairs, and Craig Later, my other co-chair.
Good evening.
And I think before we get started, I just wanted to take a mention that one of our the longest serving board member of Community Board 8, Barbara Chalky, just passed away a day or so ago. And she was someone that I think all of us, Barbara was not only on the board for many years, but she was the board chair and an active participant. And she was a great person in the community and very public spirited. And we're all going to miss her very much, but I just wanted to make that mention. I'm sure there'll be more said at the full board meeting next week from today. But I didn't want to let that go before we got started. I don't know if Craig, if you wanted to say anything.
I agree entirely. It's going to be a massive loss for the community board. She's just been a pillar of the community and this board for so long. Someone who just had so much institutional knowledge of everything in this community and such an advocate. So we're all going to miss her and mourn her loss.
Thank you, Craig. Why don't we get into our agenda? And our first thing on the agenda is the update from New York City Transit. We're pleased to have Marcus Book here, who has been the representative to this board for many years and always tells us like it is, whether we want to hear it or not. So Marcus.
Hi, Chuck. How are you? Good evening, everybody. It's good to see those that I can see. So the agenda item is, for those who don't know me, I'm, again, Marcus Book. I'm with New York City Transit's Government and Community Relations. And like Chuck said, I've been at this for some time through Vic and then Second Avenue Subway and the like, and still here, but welcome. Thanks for having me. So the agenda item is an update from New York City Transit. I think specifically the update that folks were looking for was where we're at with the 68th Street Hunter College project. Am I correct?
That is.
And just in general, I think there'll be questions about various things having to do with subways and buses.
Okay, so I mean, New York City Transit's, we're on our way to, we began our public hearings on congestion pricing, and that's moving along. Regarding 68th Street, Hunter College, so based on the current schedule, we anticipate to start on the groundwork on that project starting in the second quarter of 2022. And we anticipate that street work will be completed by the end of 2024. So we haven't awarded the contract yet. We're anticipating awarding that contract in December of this year. And once we award the contract, we'll have a design builder for the contract, which is the law of the state now. And at that time, we'll submit the full design to DOT, and we'll secure work hours. Right now, I believe we're asking for work hours of 7 a.m., I think, to 6 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends. But of course, that's just the ask. DOT has to approve that, and we don't have those work hours yet. So that's really where we're at right now. We're still, finalizing the design. We had some discussions about, at the last meeting that I attended, we talked about the elevator moving from the southeast corner of 68th Street under the Hunter College building is now going to be on the northeast corner. And we're moving right along.
Okay. Marcus, anything else to report in terms of bus service or subway service? Any changes or upgrades that you want to pass on?
No, I think you guys got the presentation that we did on the Elevate Transit that the City Council just recently passed that will zoning for accessibility, which will allow us to deal with developers and developments and obtaining easement, transit easement for those projects to help us move along getting the system fully accessible. And of course, we have the capital program has a number of ADA projects in it. This particular project is in the previous capital program, so that's already funded, and we're moving along.
Can you just give us an update as to where we are in terms of recovery from COVID in terms of ridership? And I know because I follow the data on a regular basis on the MTA website, but just in terms of the levels of service for buses and subways compared to pre-pandemic levels, are we operating at 100% of service from pre-pandemic, or have there been service reductions that were put in that still haven't been?
Right. So the ridership has not returned to fully to pre-pandemic levels, where I think over 50%, I believe, in the ridership, and that's continuing to tick along ahead, and additional ridership continues to come on as we move through this period and things get better and people get vaccinated. We're running the full service, the full schedule of service on buses and subways, but we have run into some issues with operator availability on buses in particular. And we also were under a hiring freeze during that period when the pandemic began. And once we've come out of that and that freeze was lifted, we've been able to begin hiring more bus drivers and train operators and conductors and try to get fully back up to staff. I think in COVID, we lost about 173 people, employees in that tragic period. And but we're moving in the right direction. But we're running a full schedule.
Great, thank you.
Sometimes we run into some bumps in the road based on that availability, but.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to ask any questions of Marcus here? If you would like that, just to raise your hand and we will try to recognize you.
And you can find the raise hand button under reactions at the bottom of your screen.
I didn't see anybody from the public. Do you see anybody? Well,
No, not yet.
Not yet.
okay. So why don't we go to the board? And I know Michelle Birnbaum had her hand up. Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. Marcus, relevant to that program, the easement for accessibility, a lot of us were not pleased with that trade-off. There was nobody against the accessibility, that was for sure, but the trade-off. How much community input will there be now that that program is actually going into effect? What is the actual protocol for community and community board input and public?
Community board, when the developer's on board and the discussion begins and they've reached out to New York City Transit and we've determined that, you know, an applicable easement is in place based on the city council law and what the provisions are in that, we will absolutely have community involvement. You know, we will come to the community board and let you know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it, and it'll be based on the provisions in the councils of what they passed last week.
Well, that was actually my follow-up question. Within the law that was passed, my recollection is that there was actually a number of feet actually put in, put into the law. So what kind of real input will we have to alter that, to make our recommendations about it if we think it's too much, it's too high, it's whatever? How much play is there going to be? Or when you say input, does it really mean that it will be notified? And I appreciate that. And the developer will present to us, so I'm heartened to know that. But is that just informational? Will we really have any ability to reduce the height or the bulk or whatever? Will there be any option for that? Any play at all?
I don't think the law makes a provision for that. I mean, then that would mean that the board would have an approval process. If there was something that they didn't agree with. I think it's more an advisory provision where the community has an opportunity to voice their concerns, and those concerns hopefully will be taken into consideration. I believe they will be taken into consideration, but I think that they'll be following the law.
Yeah, so there won't be a mandate to really do that. In essence, whatever that law says, the developer will be building as of right within the contents of that law is what I'm hearing. My other question is, can you give us a little bit of an overview, to the best of your knowledge or your information, as to what percentage of the boards across the city were in favor of this?
I don't have a percentage, Michelle, but I will say that in each of the boards that we went to, I just went to the boards in Manhattan, but in each of the boards that we went to, they had similar concerns about, the height provisions and things like that. And so we didn't get a lot of complete opposition. I'd say the percentage of boards that said, we're in opposition to this was very low, but their concerns were expressed. So they had similar concerns.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marcus. Good to see you.
I see a member of the public, Lisa.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lisa.
Unmute yourself, Lisa, and please give us your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Lisa Klitzis. I live on 78th and First.
Okay.
I have a question. I don't know if this will apply in terms of congestion pricing. Can you just explain to me what that is? What's going to happen exactly with that?
Well, I think the proper thing to do, I don't think I'm the person to explain congestion pricing. I mean, basically below 60th Street, there'll be a toll to charge drivers to generate revenue for transportation. I mean, that's the provisions of it, but there are public hearings, and there's been public hearings in Manhattan. I think there were two in which it was explained. I think you can go on our website and the whole thing is explained. There'll be a presentation there and you can get that information better there. MTA.info.
Okay, I'll do that. My second question is, do you have anything to do with how there's the bike lanes, like on First Avenue, there's bike lanes. And then there are those extended, lanes for cars to make a left turn with the bike lanes. Is that something that the DOT is in charge of, or?
Yes, that would be DOT.
Okay. So here's what my biggest concern is. Two things, which I don't think you deal with in terms of enforcement for the bikers. I almost got hit again last night. I can't tell you how many times I almost get hit, but when I go to hail a cab to make a left turn, I'm like in the middle of traffic. If I go on 77th and First, it's like I'm in the middle of traffic. It's very dangerous to hail a cab. It's really hard to do it because there's all these trucks that are double parked or parked in those lanes next to the bike lanes. So, it really is, it's just dangerous. It's very concerning to me that it's set up that way. And I'm wondering if there's anything that
I think DOT's on the agenda, so you'll get an opportunity if you stick around to ask those questions.
All right. Okay.
And I see Will has put in he put the link in the chat for congestion pricing, so you can
Deal with the
take a look at
MTA
that.
and the buses, yeah?
Pardon?
You just deal with the MTA and the buses?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I didn't realize that. Okay. I mean, I wasn't
That's
connected.
okay. But Lisa, just so you know, those are issues that we have taken up in our committee and our board. So, and we're going to have DOT representative, as Marcus said, and you can have a chance to talk to her.
Okay. All right, great.
Coming up.
All right, thank you.
Sure. I don't see anyone from the public, so let me go to Valerie. Did you still want to say something?
Billy has his hand up first, but if you want to go to Valerie, we can.
Valerie had it first before.
They're
Billy.
both being so nice to each other. Go
ahead. either one. I don't know if
Valerie, please. Yeah, please, Valerie, go ahead.
I was gonna let Billy did have his hand up first. You go, Billy. I have a couple of questions for Marcus, so go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Valerie. So hi, Marcus. Thanks for joining us tonight. My question is somewhat similar to Lisa's about bike lanes and First Avenue in particular. A couple of years ago, we had a meeting where someone spoke to us about having a collision in the bike lane. They were riding their bike and they were hit by a car. And I think it was in the mixing zones that exist on First Avenue, which add to some of the, I think I would say, the havoc that exists on the avenue. And we were told that in terms of getting safety improvements, going from a mixing zone to an offset crossing, which would slow down the traffic, particularly the left turning car traffic, that would occur when the avenue gets repaved. I saw recently First Avenue was repaved in the East 50s. I don't know whether it was repaved at all recently higher up. So my question is, can you give us an update on whether the avenues have been recently repaved or will soon be repaved? And if so, whether on First and Second Avenue, DOT will be installing the safety improvements such as the offset crossings?
Hi, Billy. It's Colleen from DOT. That question should be direct to my agency. I can check with our roadway division in terms of what locations were repaved. I do recall the conversation that when we repave a street that has a mixing zone, we were going to install the offset crossing. So I'll touch base with them and I'll get back to you on that, okay?
Great. Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome, Billy.
Okay, can we go to Valerie? Valerie, you there?
Yeah, hi. Hey, Marcus. It's good to see you.
You too,
Mike, I have a couple of questions. So the first one is I want to pick up on a subject that East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association is not going to give up on, which is we want to get that limited bus stop at 72nd Street and 2nd Avenue, and then again on First Avenue. I think it's even more important now post-COVID to combine some issues. I mean, we have seniors that have to pay extra money if they're going to get in a cab on the Upper East Side to go to these hospitals. And the closest we can get them to the hospital for special surgery and their 71st Street entrance, the better. And then the closest we can get them to the actual subway entrance at 72nd Street coming south on 2nd Avenue. I really do think that it's important for New York City Transit to keep looking at that as a bus stop. So I don't know where you guys stand. I know, in 2019, when we had a bunch of meetings, you were talking about reducing bus service along 72nd Street and in our area. And we, now more than ever need more bus service. So I think we're going to pick up where we left off there. There haven't been a lot of hearings, and Liz Patrick, who's been involved in that, hasn't been as active as she will be again. So can you just respond on what you guys are looking at?
Well, I think that you'll have a great opportunity to revisit this. We've actually been down this road a number of times in a number of ways, including myself going out with Liz in the street to check it out. And And we have not moved on that position yet, but when the Manhattan bus redesign begins, that will be another opportunity to begin that conversation again in earnest. Right now, the Bronx bus redesign is going on. We had a big pause because of COVID. We would probably already have gotten to the Manhattan redesign by now, but that has been, that slowed things up a little bit. So the Manhattan redesign will be your opportunity to rediscuss.
So when, are you going to announce that through the community board when that will be, or when?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, great. And then secondly, just in terms of the subway stations along 2nd Avenue and the 2nd Avenue subway, look, I understand. I know that New York City Transit was one of the hardest agencies hit by COVID tragedy in terms of city employees, and that was awful. I think the next one was the Board of Elections. Those two city agencies seem to have the most casualties from COVID early on in the pandemic. But, you know, we just see like a very steep decline in the sanitariness, if you use that word, I have to make up a new word, of these stations and the entrances and just their overall appearance. And not really seeing a lot of attention to that. And I'm not really sure who we should be talking to about that. So maybe you could send us.
So I will definitely, you actually have a really good station manager over there, David Mondesto.
Oh yeah.
So he's very responsive.
Okay.
To me. So, you know, if there's something in particular, we are dealing with, I mean, there's lots of things. If someone shows signs of COVID, you know, they have to go out and quarantine. So we're still in this period, even we're not out of it yet. So just let me know. Valerie, I'll make sure David gets on it.
Okay, I want to be cognizant of that. We haven't really made, but the neighborhood association has been getting some complaints about the overall cleanliness of the station areas, and also too, I mean, with the number of homeless people that have taken refuge in the East 72nd Street, the escalator entrance has been overwhelming. So
understood.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, let's see. I think the next Cos Spagnoletti, can we unmute the Cos?
Yeah, I'm not sure who this question goes to, but in the city, when you scour the streets, you leave them rough and bumpy and everything for several weeks. Yet on the major highways,
that's not for. That's DOT, that's Colleen's.
Okay, yeah. So why do you leave it rough for several weeks, whereas on the major highways they do it right away?
I don't know. Well, we're going to have Colleen report next what cost. Why don't we?
Okay.
Why don't we just say that, and we'll. Are there any other questions for Marcus? I didn't see any. Will, do you?
Well, I don't see any either. I had a series of questions that I was waiting.
Michelle has raised her hand again. So if you want to ask your question, I'll go back to Michelle, or vice versa.
If you want to do first, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Marcus, first of all, as always, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all the information you provide and all the service that you have given us over the years and continue to do. You mentioned the Manhattan bus redesign. Is there an anticipated start date at this time for that project commencing? Not the actual implementation, but just the actual study and public outreach at the onset. Did we lose Marcus?
I don't know.
It appears we lost him. Maybe his internet cut out or something.
Yeah, I would suspect that is the case. Let's give him a moment to come back. In the meantime, while we wait, do we want to allow do we want to, oh, wait, I see Marcus back on the list. So he's unmuted at this point.
Okay, Marcus, go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I bad connection. It just dropped off. Sorry about that.
No worries. Did you hear my question or?
No.
Okay. My question was, and I thank you for joining us and all the service that, all of your service for, to us. My first question was, you mentioned the Manhattan bus redesign. Do you have any sense as to when that project will commence and in terms of when we may have the first round of public
I don't know if you
outreach?
can hear me. Can you hear me, Craig?
Yes.
All right, so I hope you can hear me. You're frozen. Right now, we're doing the Bronx, and when the Bronx is completed, I believe we're going to go to Brooklyn and then Manhattan. So I think we have.
Oops. I think we've lost Marcus here.
I think we did also.
Yeah, I think we lost him again.
Yeah, I'll let you know when he's back.
All right. What?
And we've been doing so well with our
Yeah.
meetings.
Um,
In the meantime, do we want to allow Colleen to answer Kaz's question?
yeah. Colleen, why don't you answer Kaz's question about the way the streets are resurfaced and they're left scraped, but all bumpy until.
I'm more than happy to answer Kaz's question this evening. So whenever we mill and pave a street, we have coordination meetings with all of the utilities citywide. It's usually Verizon, DEP, or Con Ed. So when we mill a street, we leave it open for a few weeks so that we can allow the utilities to do whatever work that they need to do in that roadway. Because we don't want to repave the street and then a utility will come in a week and say, hey, we have this emergency work, we need to do that. Because when the street is milled, it's protected for X amount of years. So that's why we leave it open, Kaz.
Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
It is a few weeks, and then all the utilities come in and do whatever they need to do.
Yes, whatever work that they need to do, we allow them that time frame to make repairs to their infrastructure.
But wouldn't you know this beforehand if there's going to be any work? There's no guarantee that once you've repaved, the week after they're going to come back and do it.
Well, again, we have monthly utility meetings with all of these agencies. So whatever work that they need to do, they need to let us know, and they need to pull permits from DOT. That's why the roadway is left milled for a few weeks.
Okay, so we endure the bumpy road.
Yes,
Unfortunately, yes.
I feel the same way you do about them, Kaz, but I guess there's no choice.
Highway's different, Kaz, because there are not that many utility hardware on a highway. Whereas if you look at a roadway, you'll see quite a few utility, whether it's a DEP manhole cover or if it's a Con Ed substation.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Colleen.
You're welcome, Kaz.
No complaints tonight.
I'm going.
Well, maybe why don't we go to Colleen? I don't know if Marcus is able to come back, but the second item is updates from New York City DOT, and I know there's a bunch of questions that people had already for you.
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and ask the questions?
You want to? Okay. Is there anything you want to update us on at all at this point?
I don't have anything much to share. Nothing new.
Okay. Well, I know that Billy had a question, and why don't we get back to Billy's question? Is Billy's? Can we? Billy, do you want to, I don't know if you heard Billy's question, but why don't you
I
restate?
did. I heard Billy's question, and I will check to see what locations we have milled and plan to pave, and find out about the offset crossings, because I do remember that conversation when we came to the community boards. We did mention that locations that had the configuration, we were going to install the offset crossing, the mixing zones, yeah.
Mhm.
So Billy, I will
And-
look into that, and I will get back to you and Will on it, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, Colleen. And if I just may add to the question, there's a DOT has this document that you'll know of, cycling at the crossroads, I think, something like that. And it talks about these safety measures. And one thing that's in the document is it talked about how, offset crossings have these advantages, but there are certain downsides, and potentially it may result, I think, in cyclists stopping more to sort of gauge the turning drivers. I don't know if I'm quite articulating it the way the document does, but here's the bottom line. The question is, are there sort of improvements on that model that DOT, I guess, has explored? And I know maybe this seems a little academic, but the document talked specifically about looking into ways of improving offset crossings. So I guess I would just add that to my question, because since this has now been a couple of years, we may have evolved to the point where the offset crossing isn't even the precise model that you want, if that makes any sense.
Right, and that's an excellent point that you're raising. Feel free to email me that, and
Yeah.
I will reach out to our bikes division and get the latest on it.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Are there any, Will, do you see any questions from the public for Colleen? I don't see any here on mine, but I see, oh, Lisa, right, why don't we have Lisa come back? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So my question is the same as what I asked before, or my concern really is there anything that can be done to make it safer when you step out into the street to hail a cab in these areas where there's bike lanes, and then there are those lanes that are directing the cars to turn left, and then there's the trucks, which sometimes start moving when you don't even know that they're going to start moving, that are double parked.
So, I mean, Lisa, when you're hailing a cab, the recommendation or the suggestion is that the cab should pull over in an area that's really safe for pickup and drop off of passengers. In terms of trucks that are double parking and obstructing a clear path, of course, I want to tell you that's an enforcement issue, because that, NYPD needs to be involved with that, especially with double parking. Any locations where the curb is free and safe, that's where a cab should pull over to pick up passengers.
So if you want to go left, you can't be, like, you used to be able to stand at like 77th and 1st and hail the cab and go left. Now you have to go a block down to hail the cab, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah.
So these areas that are from the bicycle lane to the street that are kind of blocked out with lines, are trucks supposed to be there? Do you know what I'm talking about?
If you're talking about the areas that have buffer zones, they're not supposed to be in those locations where we have
They're
buffer
parked there
zones.
all the time, all the time.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
that,
if you have specific locations, I mean, feel free to email it to me. I'll put my email address in the chat, and I can reach out to the local precinct. We do have a call with the precinct next week, so that is something I can raise with them.
Okay. Now, do you deal with the bikers at all? And
We do educational outreach to cyclists at locations where we have bike lanes.
okay. So I'm finding that there's absolutely no enforcement for bicyclists. They come in both directions on First Avenue. I almost got hit again last night. The light it turned, and I went to step off the curb, and somebody came going in the other direction that they shouldn't have been going, and I almost got hit. And this has been happening all the time. I've never seen a policeman or anyone enforce the bike rules. And they go really fast in these bike lanes. It's kind of scary to cross the street now.
You know what, in my meeting with the local precinct next week, I'll raise that.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Lisa,
you.
just so you know, the 19th precinct, which is our precinct in our area, they write the second most tickets for bike infractions in the city. They're number 2, and they write thousands every year. However, they're not necessarily there when you need them. But I think it's very tricky, and it's something that we've had here. We've had hearings in our committee about to see if there are ways to improve bike safety, and I think we're going to be doing more of that. So you may want to, if you follow our agendas, look for that.
Okay.
And see.
Yeah, I find it happens mostly in the evenings, during rush hour. So.
I know, Lisa, that NYPD, they do enforcement because I attend traffic stat, which is overall with all of the precincts. And one of their items that they always talk about is their bike enforcement and what they have done within a 28-day period.
Yeah.
So they do issue summonses. And again, it's like what Chuck said, it depends on, what time it's being done.
Yeah. Well, it's been years and I've never seen it, but I trust what you're saying. I mean, if you say they're doing enforcement, I personally have never seen them on the streets. But anyway, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's go to Michelle Birnbaum. Oh, okay. Well, we have Leah Hanlon first, Michelle, if you can hold from the public. So can we unmute Leah?
Yeah, unmuting Leah, and I'll just remind anybody participating from the public, you can ask a question or make a comment for the DOT by going to the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and finding the raise hand button there.
Yes, hi. I would just like to follow up on Lisa's last point. We've often heard in these meetings the site that the second precinct writes so many tickets that they're the second highest or the highest. But if the city average is ticket writing of 0.001% of what's necessary, and this 19th precinct is writing 0.002% of what's necessary, that puts them at double the city average. The point is that they might be the highest or the second highest, but there's, again, like Lisa, I've never once ever, in all the time I spend walking on the street, seen a cyclist getting a ticket. And yet I can't walk out there for a minute without seeing them running the reds, going the wrong way, riding on the sidewalk. So that's just not that's a very misleading statistic to cite because it's plainly not indicating any real level of enforcement.
Leah, can I explain something to you in this? We've dealt with this in our committee for a number of years. And here's the problem. No matter, they may write whatever is second most tickets, but it's probably still a small number. And the number of police officers that are on the street to do traffic enforcement is somewhat limited. And they're focused mostly on cars because in the end, the cars are more dangerous. And so you're never going to solve the problem. And we found this in our committee in a number of things. Well, you'd always like to see more enforcement. Enforcement alone is never going to solve the problem. And we've been looking at other ways to deal with it. We've had hearings in our committee about whether we ought to push forward on things like bike licensing, and we're going to talk about that further in our committee so people are more accountable. But I think you're never going to see the kind of enforcement that a lot of people would like to see because, number one, they don't have the resources. Number two, they're going to be focused more on cars as opposed to bicycles. So I think that's just the reality of the way things are. But I think there are problems, and I appreciate you saying that because I think we've all observed a lot of the things that you were just talking about. And I think our challenge is to try to come up with ways to deal with that situation that go beyond enforcement, because there have to be, there just has to be another way, because you're never going to get the enforcement that a lot of people would like to see, and a bunch of us would like to see. So
I think if I could just respond, I think I don't think you really appreciate the degree to which pedestrians feel terrorized by the bicycles on the street. I know that I don't feel terrorized by cars. They don't really run red lights. They don't go the wrong way. I know where the cars are going to be, and they're there when they're supposed to be, whereas bikes almost never are. So I don't really think that either you or the 19th precinct appreciates the chaos that is caused by the bikes and not the cars. So I know you seem to disagree, but at a very minimum, if you could please refrain from making that claim about the second greatest number of tickets written, because it's a meaningless number.
okay, thanks. Thank you for your view. Okay, let's see. I think we have Kathleen Steed. Can we unmute Kathleen?
Yes, I simply, I agree with both of the previous women who have spoken. I'm a senior and I have a cane, I can't move very well. And it is absolutely horrible to go out anytime, especially with the electric bicycles and the other bicycles of all of the new delivery services they have. It's like they're coming at you from every which direction. They're on the sidewalk, they're going the wrong way, they're whatever. And again, as the other two women have talked about, I have never, ever seen, actually, I haven't seen a police car in my area, which is 90th and 3rd Avenue, ever. I can't remember the last, I think I saw a police car once, but I've never seen a police car for any reason or anybody on the street. And when I had a problem with actually it was parked in my hallway, a electric bicycle parked in the apartment hallway, I called 311 and I was told that it's like a bike, there are no regulations, they don't have to do anything. They apparently can just go and rent a bicycle, having never gotten on one, and just go. So why are there no regulations for electric bicycles? That was I was just, as I said, augmenting the other two ladies with my own personal experience that is exactly like theirs.
Thank you. I don't know, Colleen, if you do want to comment on anything, Colleen?
Cyclists are bound by the traffic rules and laws, and they have to abide by them, just as motorists who are driving a car. So they are bounded by those rules, and they have to comply with them, the traffic rules and laws.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, we had Amy Dennis also from the public. Can we unmute?
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I'm a speech therapist. I work in District 4 in an elementary school, and there's actually 2 schools in the building in East Harlem. It's on 106th and between 1st and the East River. And I actually attended a meeting back in 2019. I was looking to see if I recognized anybody, but I don't. Anyways, we have a major hardship on our hands here. We do not have ample parking for 2 schools being housed in one building. And it's really a major problem. We have like arguments over teachers. People get there at 6 in the morning to get a spot and then like cut someone off to take the spot. It's just, we really don't have ample parking. So we really have a major problem that we need to just try to figure out what we can do to remedy this. So we have 2 schools in one building and like 25 parking spots for like a lot of cars, that teachers and staff that need to park in only the East River and First on 106th between First Avenue and the East River.
Amy,
So,
go ahead.
There's been a reduction in the number of parking spaces to be allotted to teachers. You have 20 teachers who are looking for parking spaces. Ideally, we would not accommodate that. My recommendation to you is to have the principal reach out to your DOE rep, and your DOE rep will let us know. They will submit something to us in writing, and we could look at possibly creating a few spots for the teachers, but realistically, it wouldn't be 20 spaces.
Is there any way, because also we have an issue of the Parks Department, which they park in like 1 and 2 spots, taking up teacher spots as well.
And I'm sorry, but you're talking about a location that we as a community district don't cover. So I'd suggest you take this offline, and you can always contact DOT separately, but our district only goes up to 96th Street. You're talking about 106th Streets.
I will put my email in the chat and you can reach out to me.
Okay, thank you so much.
I guess that's Will.
I was gonna say that is Community Board 11, if you are looking for the right community board for that school.
Thanks, Will. I'll still put my email in the chat for him.
Okay, I don't see any further members of the public at this point. Why don't we get to the board? Michelle Birnbaum, I think.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. I'll go back and say one thing for the record. I'm sorry Marcus never got back on, but I wanted to echo Valerie's comments about the bus stop at 72nd and 2nd, and just say that when the MTA did their review, they claimed there wasn't enough ridership. But it's just a case of if you build it, they will come. Believe me, there's plenty of ridership there, and if they put that spot back, it would be very much used. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. I want to say that I support Leah and Kathleen's comments very much. Those of you who know me on the board know that I have been an advocate for many years about licensing bicyclists. I don't quite have the defeatist attitude of some that we could never get ahead of the enforcement. I think we don't have the mechanism to get ahead of the enforcement. A policeman would have to catch a bike standing still in order to enforce an infraction, because there's no way to identify the bicycle. If bicyclists, not the cyclist, but if the bicycle had a license plate on it, an identifiable number that someone could see from a bit of a distance, that would go a long way towards enforcement. It's actually the reason why cars are always or mostly in the places they're supposed to be. Can you imagine if cars didn't have license plates, what this city would look like if they were traveling around anonymously? Now, a good light at the end of the tunnel, which I wanted to tell both Leah and Kathleen, which Chuck alluded to, is that the state is now considering licensing for bicycles. And so to the extent that that's of interest to either one of you or your friends or anybody else, I suggest you find a way to jump on that bandwagon. You can write to Rebecca Seawright, who is our assembly person, and actually who I've met with over the years, who I know has a keen interest in this. And as a matter of fact, Nikita is on this Zoom call. So Nikita, you might want to take that back to the assembly member, that there are advocates for licensing that have visited the transportation committee tonight. And also she knows that I'm an avid supporter of that. I hope that this committee, since that at the moment is a state issue, but my understanding is that the city does have the opportunity at some point to weigh in, even though they are not the lead agency on this, but they can support it or perhaps pass their own city rules. It's always been a little vague as to what their role was, but it's good that it's starting in the state. And I hope that we can get some support for that in this board. It wasn't as crucial when 2% of the population were bike riding. But now that has quadrupled or more. And intentionally, the city purposely intended for there to be an increase in cycling. And yet, aside from the infrastructure in terms of bike lanes, there was no other enforcement infrastructure that was built up in accordance with the increase in this activity. And now it's not only bicycles, but you have more and more entities on the road. You have skateboards, you have all different variety of bikes, you have the little scooters, you have the big scooters. And it was always my contention going back as many as 6, 7, 8 years ago when this issue first came to the board, was that the more entities you have on the road, the more problems you will have, the more safety concerns, the more accidents, the more issues you will have. The mayor's zero vision did not address this at all. Building the lanes was not the only issue. Without enforcement, the safety is paramount and can't really be addressed. So I ask anybody who is on this Zoom call for whom this is an interest to please write to your assembly or Senate representative and state Senate, and really get on it and tell them that you're in favor of this. And I hope that this committee can put the enforcement of cycling on the agenda more often, not so much the bike lanes, but the actual enforcement issue. So I look forward to seeing that as an agenda item in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Valerie Mason, I think, is next. Can we unmute Valerie?
Thanks, Chuck. I have a couple of questions. Colleen, hi. I just sent to you a photo. I also sent it to Will. On 72nd Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue, all of a sudden we have what we're thinking is a speed camera. It's in front of 325 East 72nd Street, and to which 3 devices have been attached. And there's another one that was installed on the south side of the street, closer to 2nd Avenue, approximately at 308 East 72nd Street. Nobody seems to know what these are. We did contact the police, and they said they were going to reach out to DOT, but since you're here, I wanted to let you have the photo, and maybe you can tell us what is going on. If not tonight, can you take a look?
Hey, Valerie, it's Colleen. Yes, you know what? I can confirm with the unit if these are DOT speed cameras that we installed. I'll get back to you by tomorrow on this.
Okay, one of the issues we have, Colleen, is that there are red lights flashing on this thing at night, and the level that they are at, they're going into somebody's apartment all night long. So if you could get back to me, I would really appreciate that.
Definitely. And just so you know, our speed cameras don't flash red lights. So I will, it could be someone's doing traffic counts and they install these cameras, but let me look into it further and I'll let you know by tomorrow. Okay,
that would be awesome.
Perfect.
The second thing I want to raise, and I don't know, Chuck and Craig, tell me if I'm wrong, but we had another death at the corner of 72nd Street and 3rd Avenue. This is one of the most dangerous corners, not only on the Upper East Side, but in the entire city. And whatever Vision Zero thing has been going on that corner really does not seem to be working. The delayed lights almost cause more problems than anything else, because some corners are delayed, some corners aren't delayed, and you don't know whether you should walk forward, walk back. There's sort of like a pork chop there on the corner, which the bikes just go through, and the people are standing in this so-called protected area on the northwest side of 3rd Avenue. And it's just unbelievable to me that this continues. And we just lost another person last week at this corner. And I don't know what your plan is, but I don't want to hear something.
So whenever there is a fatality, we have a safety team that would go out there and take a look at the intersection to make sure the marking, signage, and traffic signals are all working as designed. I will follow up with them on that particular location.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go out there and you can give us some notice, we can have somebody from, you know, our neighborhood association come out there and maybe give a little bit of the lay of the land about how badly that corner is working or not working and the effect of those delayed lights. Because I don't really think if DOT has done any analysis that the installation of those delayed lights has done anything in terms of pedestrian safety on those corners. No one even really understands them. I mean, there's one light that's red and there's one light that's green at the same time. It's really awkward. So if you could get back to me on that, I would appreciate it.
Definitely. And what's the location you mentioned? 70?
It's 3rd Avenue and 72nd Street.
Right. Okay.
I just shared with Will a link to an article about the incident. It was an 81-year-old woman who was killed by a school bus. And the article alluded to the fact that the last death that occurred at this intersection was in 2012. But since in that time, there have been nearly 70 crashes at this intersection, a dozen of which resulted in injuries to drivers or cyclists or pedestrians.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Craig. The last topic I want to raise, Colleen, is at least I know Michelle and I participated in an almost 9-hour hearing at City Planning last week, which talked about the open restaurant text amendment. The interesting thing about the hearing, and you know, it's obviously a quote unquote zoning issue, but I would tell you that 99% of those 9 hours were really related not to zoning issues, but to what is happening in terms of enforcement. And they were really DOT issues. They were not zoning issues. And the city planning commissioner sat there and listened to 9 hours about lack of inspection, you know, cafes taking up 3/4 of the sidewalk, not being cleaned, what's going to happen. And so I come back to you again, because we've raised this issue a number of times. Can you tell us what are you seeing on the Upper East Side in terms of how many fines have been given out? I mean, you know, look, during the course of the 9 hours, I learned a lot about what's happening in other parts of the cities vis-a-vis the restaurant program. But it just seems that, you know, this isn't really a zoning issue. I mean, everybody had complaints about the Department of Transportation, but nobody had any answers about how many violations there have been. So in terms of the Upper East Side, since the last time we met, how many violations have been handed out by Department of Transportation, and what are you seeing? Because I'm getting a lot of complaints from our neighbors about, you know, the fact that they're literally having to walk through a restaurant on the sidewalk to use it. And they don't see, you know, one of the ladies was talking about lack of enforcement on the bicycles. Again, I ask you, how many people do you have out there doing enforcement now?
So, you know, like I had mentioned before, if you see a restaurant that's not in compliance, feel free to email me the location with the address and I'll have an inspector go out there. We continue to inspect locations. We continue to issue cease and desist to restaurants that are not in compliance. We also issue warnings to restaurants that are not maintaining the 8-foot clearance on the sidewalk. In terms of how many restaurants have received violations, I don't have those numbers. I can find out for you how many have received violations in the Upper East Side. I can get you that information, but off of my head, I don't know.
Let me ask you this. In terms of the restaurants that are in Community Board 8, you know, is there any reporting mechanism that you have that comes to Will to tell us when you are issuing cease and desist and other orders? Because I think that would also be relevant to street life. And when we're reevaluating someone's application, to know whether they've actually been a good neighbor or not.
I am happy to share with Will locations that we've issued cease and desist in your community board. That's not an issue. I can forward that information to Will.
I think that would,
And-
I mean, helpful. Thank you.
Yes, and I will also find out the numbers that we've issued cease and desist to of restaurants in your areas. I can get that information to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Okay, I think Lowell Barton is next. Can we unmute Lowell?
Hi, thank you. Want to get back to the bike buffer, making a left turn. From somebody who drives, and I drive safely, when I'm in that buffer, looking at my side view mirror, I have a very clear view of what's happening down that bike lane for 2 or 3 blocks. When you put the car one lane over, or if there's a truck parked in that buffer, now I have to make a large turn and the nose of the car is sticking out. And you don't have a good view. It's hard enough making the turn when you're focused on who's jogging, who's walking, who's texting, and what bicycles are coming, what's a scooter going really fast, are they going the right way? You're focusing on so much. To take away that side view mirror really makes it harder for a driver to be safe. I understand that the buffer makes them feel more comfortable, but being able to see bicycles coming that are driving correctly the right way down a line, that's very important. And you take that away when you move the car over the width of a car or one lane over. And I also like to bring up parking is so difficult in this, the city, and it's congested because everybody's looking for a spot, circling. And I can't help but notice, but by Rupert Towers, there's so many spots, even though they have a parking garage and a parking lot on the same block of 90th Street. And I believe the other side of Rupert Towers is the same situation. And they have so many spots, no standing, which are just either placards or they could be returned to people who want to do business in the city or just park. That would be great. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, Colleen, I don't know whether you had any comment on that.
Placard parking is something that our agency doesn't enforce. If there are areas where there are placard parking where people are abusing it, that's something that should be reported to the local precinct.
Lowell, we should take a look. I know where you mean, right on 90th Street there. There's a big line of stuff right in front of Rupert where it's supposed to be no parking. I'm not sure what that is all about, but we'll check. We should check that. Do you know what that is, Colleen, off the bat?
I don't know. No.
Okay, we'll take a look.
Keep me posted.
Rita has had her hand up. Rita Popper, I think, is next.
So before Rita says anything, Rita, we are making progress with James Cagney. Con Ed is willing to come to the site. We're just trying to find a date with DEP. I promise to get back to you by this Friday with something, if not no later than Monday.
Colleen, thank you. I have complete faith in you.
Was there anything else, Rita?
Yes.
You wanted?
Now that the days are getting shorter and it gets darker earlier, I've been saying this for a very long time. What could we do to make it mandatory that bikes have a front light and a back and a tail light? That's all. That no bike should be sold in the city without having lights, and those who are already owned by people without lights, they should get a month to get the lights put on, or else have their bike confiscated. It is very dangerous crossing at night when a bicyclist is wearing black. The bicycle is, you can't see, it's a dark tire and without any light coming down. And we've been discussing this for a very long time. I would like to see something done. I'm not asking to move signs. I don't want you to repaint everything. I just want to make it safe for the people who are crossing, for us pedestrians. because we have rights too. Thank you.
Sure, and Rita, that's great that you brought that up, because our safety education, we have an initiative where we're going out there and we're meeting with folks, cyclists, pedestrians, motorists as well, and we're giving out pamphlets. We're also giving out these bells and these lights that you mentioned, and these neon keychains, so that folks are more visible as they cross the streets.
Aren't they required to have some kind
They
of?
are, yes, they are required to have that. Yes, cyclists are required to have it
But
as
they
well.
don't. But not all of them, but many don't have it, and it's very dangerous.
I
And
hear
we're
you.
not asking to move the moon. We're not asking to do anything. It would be like buying a car without lights.
Absolutely.
Thank you. John Phillips, I believe, is next. John, can we unmute John?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So, I was patiently listening to what everyone had to say, and I've seen over the last year a huge problem on the roadways. And it's affected so many aspects of my personal life as a community member, as a business owner, and as someone who has to make their way through the city. And I think the linking thread, and Michelle, you spoke about it very eloquently, is functionality. I mean, safety is a part of being functional with all of this. We're never going to get rid of trucks. We're never going to get rid of cyclists or scooters. We're not going to get rid of pedestrians, and we need to be able to drive in this city with buses, quadruple parked, double parked. And so the real question here is, how do we get all of these things to work kind of hand in hand? Now, I'll tell you, I had to go pick up some supplies the other day from 164th Street. It took me 3 hours to get back to 86th in York. That's not good. New York City, it didn't take me 3 hours 4 years ago. And so there's a lot of things that are happening. In my estimation, the biggest problem we have is trucks. I mean, I've seen trucks double parked on 2nd Avenue, and 2nd Avenue is not a very big thoroughfare. Now, naturally, I mean, trucks are the lifeblood of my business. I need them. I don't know how far we could push with this, but I mean, if they could deliver on the overnight as opposed to throughout the day, if there's some limitation on when they're coming into the city. Bus lanes, again, they're essential. We need public transportation, but they take up 3 lanes in so many cases. I almost got hit by a bus today. And as I went around the bus, I almost got hit by ready for this, an Amazon delivery boy on an electric scooter towing a hand truck next to his electric scooter. He took up almost 1.5 lanes of traffic. The reason I bring these up is it's not safe for motorists. It's not safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, or any of the above. And I don't think any of us have a simple answer to this, but we have to be able to integrate all of these things into our city, because as the years go on, we're going to see more delivered products. We're going to see businesses that require movement throughout the city. And we have to make sure that the elderly folks in our communities are safe and able to go out without fear of getting hit by a partially motorized vehicle. Again, I don't have any solutions to this, but we need to get much better than where we are right now.
Colleen, any comments, Colleen?
We have an Office of Freight and Mobility, and that division has been working with a lot of businesses, especially supermarkets, to allow for the late night deliveries where you see there's less traffic. It's not as disruptive. We do have a program like that, but it's a good point that you're raising, with all of the various activities that's going on, in the roadway and in the area as well.
Yeah. Colleen, I was actually going to ask about the Office of Freight and Mobility. I've seen some presentations in my professional capacity from that office, and I had been thinking about, because we've been as a board, before John was appointed as a member, we've been talking about some of the issues regarding truck parking, double parking, warehousing that takes place. And I was hoping that we can have the Office of Freight and Mobility be able to come in and talk about some of their initiatives and some of their plans that they've been developing. Would that be something that you would be able to facilitate?
Of course, yes, I can ask them, definitely. And I'll let you know if we can get them on next month's agenda.
Good idea.
Thank you.
And we've also been trying to see if we can get representatives from Amazon or Fresh Direct as examples. So we
That
can
would
hear
be-
from some
yeah.
of these companies just to hear what their perspective is as well as we try to come up with solutions to this issue that's just pervasive.
Well,
That's a great idea. I'll confirm with them and we can work on that.
It's also quite complicated, and let me add this in here. I'm used to getting my broadliner deliveries in early in the day. They don't come till 2, 3 o'clock. And, you know, if I had to guess, it's the conditions of the roadway. Now, I mean, this is going to be an unpopular thing, but I think the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit's nuts. I think that really causes a lot of traffic. It may save lives as well, I'm not saying that, but we have a condition on the road where you just cannot move through this city in any reasonable amount of time. And so what I'll call broadliners, you know, they have a real concern also because they're contending with unions. So there's no easy answers to this. I do understand that.
John, one of the issues, John, that we've had come before the committee and we're going to explore is that all of these places like Fresh Direct, Amazon, you know, you name it, they have so many trucks on the road and there's so much double parking with those trucks and some of them stay for a while. And, you know, this is with all the package delivery stuff, that's become a big issue. And I think that's really in the last few years contributed to a lot of this. And that's why when Colleen's talking about their Office of Traffic, you know, Mobility and Craig, you know, saying we ought to have them come and talk about it, because some of the things they put forth is maybe there ought to be special loading zones for these trucks so they don't have to double park. And, you know, and there's a lot of, as you said, I mean, there's a lot of looking that has to be done to try and harmonize all this stuff. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, especially in this new environment.
Yeah, and John, these are companies that we're working with as well to facilitate their deliveries to make it much more better for them. So
Right.
I'll be more than happy to connect with that division and have them come and give a presentation.
Yes, that'd be great. And, you know, just to, again, be very transparent about it, it's a matter of making this become functional. You know, I think the bike lanes, for example, of a number of people I know it's very unpopular with, but, you know, I'm very in favor of that. The quality of life for, you know, people in New York City presumably will get better because of the exercise, because of their access to, you know, easy mobility that's good for the environment. I'm all for that. But now that we're doing that, we have to think about all of the kind of areas of life that that's going to touch.
Well, to be continued on this. We'll have some people back on that, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chuck.
Okay. I think we have a member of the public, Ben, if he can give us a full name, we'll unmute him.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for giving me some time. I was just wondering if there's anything that's being done regarding...
Ben, for the record, can you give us your last name?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's another Ben Gordon. My name is Ben Gordon.
Okay.
I was wondering if anything is being done about the motorcyclists who come up and down 2nd Avenue, run the red lights, and create an incredible amount of noise. The motorcycle groups, there's these large groups on motorcycles and ATVs that come down
So Ben,
pretty often
that's something
during
that,
the good weather.
yeah, that's something that you would have to raise with the local precinct. And I recommend that you attend their community council meetings because they have monthly meetings and you can bring that topic up to them or call the traffic safety officer or the community affairs officer.
Yeah, that traffic enforcement, I guess, is the people that deal with that. But I know that can be an issue. You're absolutely right, Ben, and it's a big pain.
It's also good to reach out to the local precinct and let them know.
Is there anything further from the public, Will, that you see?
No.
So let's go back to the board and people who haven't yet spoken on this. Rohit, do you want to, can we unmute Rohit?
Thanks, Chuck. Colleen, I just wanted to ask, I believe the DOT recently issued its updated speed camera enforcement report. Could you share any highlights and is there any data specific to the Upper East Side in terms of how the speed cameras are doing and what effect they're having?
I don't have that report on me. I'd have to review it. I can get back to you on it to let you know how the Upper East Side is doing with that.
Thanks. That would be great. And maybe for a subsequent meeting when you're here, you could give us some highlights, because having looked at the previous versions, there sometimes specific corridors are called out, but I think given the traffic on some of our avenues, it would be great to see if there's any impact on the Upper East
Yeah,
Side.
Rohit, and if you have specific questions, can you email it to me? And
Sure.
I'd be more than happy to share whatever information I have with the board.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Michelle, can we unmute Michelle? Michelle.
Yeah, Colleen, I just wanted to address the issue with the delays. We talked about 3rd Avenue and 72nd Street. And many years ago, when we talked about putting these delayed lights into an intersection, I actually remember that intersection was specifically addressed. And Susan Siskins, I hope she doesn't mind that I'm using her name or that I've mentioned her, but she too, as I did, had a concern over this delay light. And I'm asking you about it because I want to know if there's ever actually been a real study about it as to whether or not there was any benefit. And I'll tell you why this is coming to me. If you are, for example, a driver that's coming east, on an eastbound street, and you are now approaching 3rd Avenue and going to make a left turn onto 3rd Avenue. In the past, the pedestrian was at the curb. They may have stepped onto the curb, but they are not yet in the middle of 3rd Avenue. And so the driver would usually go to the middle of an avenue, like a wide one like 3rd Avenue, and make that left turn into the middle of the avenue before a pedestrian would actually, having stepped off the curb, get to the middle of the avenue. And I contended, and I believe she felt the same way. She'll tell me if I'm putting words in her mouth, but I think she did. Some of us did anyway. That was really the safer scenario than actually bringing a pedestrian in, that the first time they step off a curb is either from a point further into the intersection, or that they start to move into the intersection because the light is delayed. So I know that these were put in with the premise that it was a safe thing to do, but I really wonder if over the years that has really turned out to be true. So that's really my question to you. And then I just have a comment about Rita's thing about putting lights on bikes. Not only lights, I agree with her, but they should be required to have these lights. I don't know what their technical name is called, but they throw the beam. And many of them, those beams can go as much as a half a mile or a mile, because having a light that just lights up the bike's position on the roadway is not a good warning to a pedestrian, but a light that they could see from 5-6 blocks away. And I attempted to get some state legislation on this, and I hope that eventually we do. But in your outreach and education program to cyclists, maybe you can ask that they have those. It's a much safer scenario. At any rate, getting back to the delayed light and all that, I wondered what the stats actually show.
And you know what, Michelle, I'll check with our signals division to see if they conducted any studies, and as you mentioned, what the benefits are to those studies. And maybe we can look at having a site visit there with our signals division to really see what's going on at that intersection. We'll try to organize something as soon as possible with that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cos Spagnoletti, I think. Can we unmute Cos? Had a question?
Yeah, 1 point for you, Valerie. 1,722 inspections in 21. Fiji. And that's for you too, Colleen. There's a database out there of all the inspections and all the everything that's gone on forever. And there's another database of who applied for it. But again, Colleen, walking up and down the avenue, there's places that have been inspected. There's still violations. Once the inspection goes on, they get cited, nothing happens. So where
And,
are we?
Franz, when this becomes a permanent program, I mean, keep in mind, when the city launched this, it was temporary, and we did it for the restaurants to get back on their feet. So now that DOT is taking over this program, once it becomes a permanent, there are going to be stronger, stricter enforcement. And the locations where you see outdoor dining, they are not, some locations may not meet the criteria qualified to have, the structures. So again, we're going to be vetting through it once this all becomes permanent.
So before it does become permanent, are we going to hear anything from DOT on every time?
You will.
Okay.
We will come back to the community board, and we will give another presentation about, the permanent program again, and what it consists of, and what the rules and regulations would be, and what the guidelines would be for the structures. And of course, we're doing this because we want to get input from the community board prior to anything happening.
Cost schedule. We've talked to, as Colleen's correct, they'll come back and lay out what they would like as a program, get our comments and thoughts before things go into effect.
Yeah, Colleen, it may pay to send Will those 2 databases of the open restaurants.
Okay.
Colleen, do you have any sense of the timing for DOT coming back to discuss open restaurants in the permanent program as it's developing?
I don't believe we're going to come back. Maybe, I don't quote me on this, because I'll have to confirm. It's possible we might come back, maybe in the new year, early on, or because right now we're working on the guidelines and the rules and regulations under the permanent program. So let me get back to you on that, Kurt. I'll get more info on it.
Okay, great. And while I had a few other questions and updates and such, last month you had mentioned that there was a delay in completing the implementation of the Protect Bike Lanes on 61st and 62nd Street. Has that been completed?
It's been completed, yes. We worked with the with the owner for the open restaurant, and they were able to remove the structure to allow us to complete the markings that we needed to do.
Great. And then this just came up in something else I was doing. Do you have any updates in terms of any progress on getting the York Avenue traffic study initiated?
I don't have any updates on that, no.
Okay. And then another general question that I had is, I don't know if you can speak just off the cuff right now about DOT initiatives regarding preventing future or limiting future flooding issues whenever we have extreme rain events taking place, like we've seen more recently. Are there any programs that DOT currently has or is considering or developing or planning for to address resiliency issues, and especially related to climate change, and whether it be extreme heat and the impact that it has on roadways, or extreme cold or extreme rain events that cause flooding and such?
That's a good question. I don't know of any, that I can elaborate of, but I know that we have worked with various agencies in the past, such as DEP with their catch basins, and with DDC as well, when they're reconstructing streets to try to mitigate those issues that you mentioned in terms of heavy flooding. Again, I would have to find out and get back to you on that one.
And who is responsible for clearing catch basins and storm drains in advance of storms, if we know?
That would be DEP.
That is DEP, okay.
Yes.
Great. And then I was just going to say, since we have been discussing the issue of, I believe we were talking about leading pedestrian intervals and the intersection of 72nd and 3rd. So just from a personal standpoint, I find the leading pedestrian intervals to be very helpful as a pedestrian. However, my question really is, I noticed that at 86th and 3rd, it works differently than most other intersections, where not only do you have an LPI for traffic crossing over across 3rd Avenue, but you also have one crossing 86th Street as well, which is atypical of other intersections. So I was wondering if there's something different on 3rd Avenue specifically that may be creating some confusion.
I don't, you know what? I don't know if there's anything happening differently at 3rd Avenue. It could be the cycle of a particular intersection that's operating differently. So it could be there might be multi-phase that's occurring at a particular intersection where the signal timing may be different. But it could be something different that is happening, as what you're alluding to. But I don't know what that is. Our signal engineers would have to look at that.
All right, if you can just see if there are multi-phase signals at any intersections on 3rd Avenue, specifically the main cross streets, like at 86th and 72nd. I wonder if that is part of the challenge that people are facing at 72nd Streets.
Sure. What are the, Craig, can you email me the locations?
Sure.
Thanks.
All right.
I guess Valerie Mason, I think she'll be allowed.
Say that, thanks, Kaz. I think that represents 10% of the number of, that inspection rate of 1,000 represents only 10% of the number of restaurants that have opened up under the program, because I believe it's now at like 11,000. So I think that's a pretty tiny number. Colleen, I would hope that you come back to us early on in the development of the guidelines so we can give some, very substantial feedback as to what we're looking for. Again, I go back to the City Planning Commission hearing and hearing people from downtown saying that, their street hasn't been cleaned in almost 2 years because of some of these structures. We're not.
The restaurant owners are responsible for cleaning the area surrounding their structures, just so you know.
Well, I get that, but they're saying that the street cleaners can't come down the street because the streets are so narrow down there that they can't even get, the Department of Sanitation isn't even able to come down their street. I have not heard that up here on the Upper East Side, but I mean, it was just appalling, some of the things we're seeing. And by the way, if you go up and down 1st and 2nd Avenue, which is what I'm most familiar with, you can see all the garbage getting caught in the difference between where the structure starts and the street, because it's not seamless, if you will. And there's tons of garbage getting caught there. And by the way, I just want to say the restaurants are doing a really good job in trying to maintain these structures. I'm not condemning any of them. But in terms of your overall quote unquote permanent program, which like I said, there was a lot of opposition to it on that hearing. So I'm not sure how permanent it's going to be. But it seems like there has to be some guidelines about being able to have a DSNY truck come down the street if these structures are going to be allowed to be maintained. And, look, I would hope that you would come back to us along the way, and if not, ask for specific guidance on issues, maybe raise certain topics and we can give you feedback. Because once again,
I mentioned, we will come back to the community boards.
And also, I would like to hear what Department of Transportation thinks is an appropriate number of inspectors to do this job correctly, because I think this is going to be one of the real issues. It should not be people in the community calling up and saying this restaurant isn't doing this or that. There should be, we should learn the lesson of the bike program and all the programs that have come before it, is that we have to have enforcement first before we let the genie out of the bottle. And so I'm begging the Department of Transportation to be accurate about the number of inspectors that they really need to carry this out correctly, so that this way the city council will provide the appropriate funds for enforcement. That's all I want to say.
Right, and just so you know, under the permanent program, we are going to have more inspectors that will be involved in the inspection of these locations.
Okay. Well, I see Cos has his hand. I don't know if you want to just beat
He was
this.
going to say that the 1,700 number was in CB8 only.
Yeah, that's only CB8, Valerie, in CB8 only. I'm not sure what it is for the whole of the city.
Okay.
But there's a database out there. Once Colleen sent it to you, you can play around with that and have a look.
Thank you, Cos. Okay, why don't we go to the next item, which is an update from Fairway. The Fairway folks are here.
Lisa, are you the only one here, or? I don't actually.
Anyone here?
Yeah, Lisa's here. Let me merge her video and her audio.
Okay.
Lisa, you can go ahead and unmute now.
Hi.
And Dan is here.
Tom is actually, hi guys. Tom is actually on as well. He's ending in 368.
Oh, okay.
If you could
and that's
unmute,
Tom?
yeah. Yep. Tom
Okay,
Sanaferchi.
great.
Thanks, Will.
Yep.
Why don't you go ahead, Lisa, Tom, or whoever wants to start.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. It is star.
Yep.
I should know this.
Perfect. Thank you, Will. I'm unmuted now. I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't get on Zoom on my phone. I'm out at another meeting as well, so I just stepped outside to dial in. But thank you, Will.
Go ahead, Tom, if you want to give us an update.
Yeah, no. So the only update I have is similar to last time. We have we reduced the pallet jacks as we spoke about. I think we've done a decent job of cleaning up the outside. We took care of the flower beds in the front along our street. Planted some mums to address that issue. We spoke to the staff about making sure they take care of any garbage that's either dumped in by others or certainly not by us. That's really the update I have for today, unless there's any questions for me.
Are there any questions that people have for Tom and Lisa? And this is, I know the last time I was by there, it looked quite good to me.
Michelle and Rita have questions.
Yeah, I see.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dan and Tom and Lisa. The area is definitely an improvement, and I thank you for that. And one of the biggest improvements was getting rid of the 3 additional forklifts and only having one in that spot. And I ask you to continue to encourage your truckers to pull into the curb, to pull to the curb, and not be tempted to stay out in the lane. That's a very big issue on 86th Street. So I'm sure you talk to them or you have someone manning the street to please be sure that they do pull in and that the forklift is parked at some far end of that 100 some odd feet so that the trucks can get in instead. What I wanted to ask you about is the folded cardboard cartons. You know, when you fold them and tie them for them to be disposed of. And also the location of the pallets. You are stacking the pallets, so that's good. But are you stacking them routinely against the building or at the sidewalk? I ask because from a pedestrian point of view and ease of passage and just less visual blight, they look better stacked against the building than freestanding stacked very high at the curb. So that's one question. Do you have sort of a philosophy of where you put them, and what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's much easier for pedestrians to navigate if we stack it against the curb, because most of them are walking inside the building, and the curb has planters. and it has signs, it has boards. So if they're stacked by the curb, it's less obtrusive than it is against the building. So that's why we do it there.
Oh, okay. You have a rationale for it. To me, the visual blight was more substantial when it was at the curb. And I actually have the same question for the Tide cartons, because that is classified as garbage. It's dry garbage, but it is trash. And that's supposed to be stacked against the building until your carting company comes and takes it away. But I see that at the curb as well. And to me, that's just too much blockage at the curb.
Yeah, that's at the curb for the same reason, because if we put it against the building, it'll actually cause more of a problem with pedestrians.
Well, you have a very big area between, your entrances, your entrance and your exit. There's substantial space there. And now that your carts have been moved inside, that was a very big benefit. So now that they are not lined up there, it seems to me that moving your trash back to the building line would be a good idea. That's where it's supposed to be for the carter.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you more. If we put it against the building, it'll cause more of a problem for people walking on the street.
Okay, well, you're on site. I'll take your word for that, but I'll ask you to keep an eye on it. Okay, on those two things stacked the way they are, and really keep an eye on it and see how it's actually functioning, because I sort of see it a little differently. I understand what you're saying, but you're there, you're on site, so just monitor it if you would. Thank you very much for all you've done and continue to do, and I continue to look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Rita, I don't know whether Rita had her hand up. Rita, did you still want to say something? I don't see Rita's hand now.
She put it back down.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say that I had occasion to go over there with my wife just not that many days ago, and I think it looks really good. And we appreciate the fact that Tom and Dan and everyone else has been willing to, come before us and take our suggestions and implement them when they think it makes sense. And there's been a lot of improvement, so we appreciate all you've done and your willingness to interact and cooperate.
Oh, Rita did raise her hand again, so.
Rita, okay. I was sorry, Rita, go ahead.
Okay. No, I just really wanted to thank Dan, Tom, and Lisa. I think you've really done a great job. I agree that your pallet and the garbage belong at the curb, because going into a food store, you want the store to look as good as possible. On one note on the inside of the store is that I see you have an old employee back again. You should gild her. She belongs at the deli counter. She's an older woman with, I don't know, a velvet net on her hair, but she really runs the place. It really makes you feel that you're in a place that you're doing business instead of having people having private conversations. But thank you for what you've done out on the street. It is very, very appreciated. Question, what time does your carter come by?
I apologize. First off, thank you for the recognition. I really appreciate that. The last question, I'm sorry, you asked what time does who come by?
What time does your trash carter? Because that's a private carter.
You know what? I'm not sure. I can answer it next time. I'm not sure. I don't want to guess at it right now. I apologize.
I mean, generally, the carters are at night.
Right.
From what I see around 2nd Avenue, that would help. If you're not going to have your trash carted away until later at night, then maybe you could keep it inside for a while, or put it, stack all those empty cartons. Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you.
no, I'll definitely take a look at that and let you know next time. Absolutely.
They come the same time every day.
Why don't we call it, Michelle, unless you have something you dying to say, which I guess you are, so go ahead.
Just wanted to say that traditionally the trash is supposed to be out 2 hours before the pickup. So if you have a specific time each day, that's when that garbage, wet or dry, should come out. Actually, you're saying to the curb. I'm saying, okay, if you want at the curb, that's fine with me. The actual sanitation laws actually said it should be at the building line, but it's fine with me if you find that's working better for you. But it shouldn't be out. It shouldn't be standing there more than a couple hours before pickup. So maybe you can check on that if you're not sure about that now. That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Yep, will do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate it. Next, do we have any?
There's one member of the public who has their hand up also. I don't know if this was in regards to Fairway.
I couldn't, I don't know if this, let's see.
Kathleen Steed.
Yes.
Yes, Kathleen.
I'm sort of taking advantage of the fact that there's a Fairway person here. My question to him, I don't shop at Fairway because there's no access for the disabled as far as having to wait in a long line. And it's painful for me to wait in a long line and there's no other choice. So I don't go to Fairway. And I was wondering if they have changed their policy since the last time I was there, which was last year.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Okay.
What policy are you referring to?
At Whole Foods, you don't have to wait in the block-long line to get to a cashier. They have a special accommodation if you're disabled. Fairway, the last time I was there, told me there was no accommodation if you had pain standing on line. You just had to stand in the line like everybody else. So my question is, has this changed since I was last there?
No, it hasn't. We don't have any specific lane for that. Let me take a look into it. I didn't realize Whole Foods was doing it. I'll look into it and I can report back next time.
Good, because I as I said, I don't shop there because it's just too painful to wait in line for the cashier.
And ma'am, if you'd like, you can contact our general manager of the store. Let them know that you were on the call tonight and that you spoke with Tom and myself, and we can get your contact information and we can see what we can do to provide any assistance to you that we can.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, so, and Kathleen, if you want to give your information to the board office and they can pass it on to the folks at Fairway, they're very responsive. They've been very responsive to us, and I'm sure they'll see if there's anything that can be done. Okay, thank you, folks. We're gonna, next, is there any old business or new business?
So I have both actually, but if others have anything they want to mention, I'll let them go first.
I don't know, any hands here
We
particularly?
have a member of the public named Ben Gordon.
Okay.
Hi, I'm wondering, I know a lot of time has been spent on Fairway, but I'm wondering if any time could be spent on Chick-fil-A. The cars that park in front of Chick-fil-A are sometimes triple parked to stop and get it. It's 86th between, it's 3rd Avenue between 86th and 87th Street. So they haven't done a good job of their crowd control, and it's very often double parked and sometimes triple parked.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, Ben, and see what, see if there's just anything that can be done. We'll get in touch with them.
You have Lisa again, old business or new business?
Yeah, Lisa.
Hi, I have a quick question. I brought this up in a meeting before with the sanitation department, but I just want to know, the restaurant downstairs from me stacks their garbage up and it's very bad. And I'm wondering I spoke to the owner, and he said that he couldn't get a dumpster to put all of his garbage into so that his carter can take it away. He leaves it there over the weekend. It starts Friday night and it just stacks up until Monday, and then they take it away Monday. So I'm wondering, are there, what department or what city agency governs the sidewalk? Do they have to get permits to have a dumpster on the sidewalk? How does it work in terms of
I
where
think
they place their details and that sort of thing?
sanitation obviously deals with the trash in those situations, but they may have to get something from DOT. I don't know if Colleen still here?
No, she isn't.
Okay. Why don't we, Lisa, we'll check into that. I think it may be, sometimes hard to get that, particularly if it's going to be there all the time, because, to get those kinds of containers, they're mostly, when you see them there, they're for construction stuff. That's, for a specified period of time. They don't like to have them there, but we'll look into that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure. Any other old or new business?
I don't see anyone else, so let me mention my 2 items. First, let me start with old business. And I just want to bring to light, as everyone probably knows, this meeting tonight was delayed a week because the congestion pricing public hearing focusing on 60th Street North was held last week. And it's great to see a number of familiar faces and board members and people who regularly attend this meeting actually provide testimony at that meeting. So, as many of you know, we have a congestion pricing task force on Community Board 8. I am one of the co-chairs, and we held a meeting the night after the October 6th public hearing to try to chart out where we're going from here and what our focus areas are going to be. And there are 2 areas that we are going to be focusing on in future meetings. And one in particular is something that is definitely going to converge with the Transportation Committee, which is why I wanted to bring this up. So one of the 2 focus areas that I think we're going to be looking at in the short term are going to deal with the Traffic Mobility Review Board, which is making the recommendations in terms of the policies regarding tolling and discounts, credits, and exemptions. We're going to have an extensive discussion about that. That's something that can really be done through the task force. But the other item is specifically looking at the area in the vicinity of the toll zone boundary, which is at and inclusive of 60th Street. So there are obviously a lot of concerns raised about the impacts that congestion pricing may bring to the lower 60s and the street network, probably below 72nd Street, and policies that may need to be implemented in order to mitigate some of the possible changes that could result from congestion pricing, parking policies and such. And we've already had people that have brought up the idea of residential parking permits in that area, which is something that this committee has touched upon in the past. I believe we last held a discussion in 2019. It may have been 2018, at which point we did not take any action. There was a package of bills that had been put forward by Keith Powers in the city council, but it didn't go anywhere and we deemed it too early to take action. But what we may end up doing on the task force is coming up with a list of recommendations that could include that, at which point we may want to, on this committee, start to think about that again. And I would suggest also that maybe if we're talking about the lower 60s and broader issues regarding transportation, not just involving congestion pricing, that it be a joint item with this transportation committee as well. So I just want to alert people here to that and give that update. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to my new item, my new business item? I see Leah Hanlon and then Michelle Birnbaum on the board.
Go ahead, Leah, and unmute.
Sorry, I had actually a piece of new or old business relating to the link in my C kiosks. But
That's next. I'll get there in a moment.
To Michelle.
Yes, let's go to Michelle.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to reiterate that when we had originally discussed permit parking, it was quite a heated discussion in the sense that people felt very strongly on both sides and everybody had real reasons for each of those opinions. So all I'm saying that if it's going to be raised again, I think it has to be specifically enumerated on the agenda and not just a general discussion saying congestion pricing or whatever. I mean, but I think if you're going to do some broad outreach, that each of the issues that come under any possibility of being considered as part of congestion pricing be specifically enumerated on the agenda when you put it out. And my other suggestion would be, since the Transportation Committee, if you use that date, which is the first Wednesday of the month, and the notice for the meeting doesn't go out until the last day of the month before, that ends up being very little time for people to actually have been properly noticed for such important issues. And so I would suggest that you might want to send out a notice almost the month before, talking about what will be coming up on that agenda as you enumerated. So I wanted to keep that in mind, because these are very important and heated issues that really very seriously affect people's quality of life. And they should have enough notice. And then I found out that the board, we no longer notice on the street. So the only way that the notice goes out is actually via the community board's email list, which I also found out is now you use a, that little barcode where people at our community tables can put their phone on it, get the barcode, and automatically be put on the community board list. A lot of people do not know to do that, but they do sign our sign-in lists. And so to the extent that there are people on those sign-ins that have not been entered into the computer.
They're all entered in, Michelle.
Oh, great. Okay, then that's terrific, because that's now the only way we can really notify people. So that's really what I mean, that they have ample notice and it's specifically detailed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle.
Go ahead with your second one. That's the one that Leo.
Sure. So the second item, as Leo alluded to, is in regards to Link NYC and the new generation of Link NYC, which is called Link 5G, as they are going to be replacing or upgrading the current network to be 5G compatible. So we just received notice today about two meetings that are really going to be geared towards community boards that are going to be taking place, where they're going to be presenting the proposed design for the Link 5G. Those meetings are going to be taking place on, let me just make sure I have the dates correct, on October 19th and October 28th. And there is a website that is up. Will, if you are able to, if you could post that website. And I know you had a picture of the proposed design that you were possibly going to display for people to see. So as I said, we just received notice of this today. I don't know that we are in a position to have any type of discussion tonight, but for anyone that's interested, you may want to read some more about it. And I think it's too bad that we don't have Jordan Wilk here to be able to weigh in on this.
Right. Leah, I think, wanted to comment on this. Can we unmute Leah? Alan?
I really was just sort of horrified to read about that today, and was wondering what input the community board would have into this big giant thing that they're proposing to put on our streets. Are they planning to pull out the existing Link kiosks and put 30-foot ones in their places?
I don't know that I know the answer for sure, but It sure looks that way from the pictures.
I would think that's probably what they're going to do. Don't you think, Craig? This is a replacement.
Mhm.
Just bigger and taller.
Right. This is literally a tower with a link screen on it, as opposed to an embedded structure that included that was only, I believe, 10 feet tall that included the screen.
We ought to maybe we should get them to come to the committee too, because this is very short notice. We just got it today. And you said one is the 19th, that's next Monday. And then the other's about, 9 days later. So it's not a lot of notice.
And then there's also, if you go to the website, it does allude to a Public Design Commission meeting where the design will be presented, and that meeting is also available to be viewed remotely.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get him to come here, maybe.
Yes.
Do we have anything else?
No, I see a few hands that are up.
All right. Let's see if we get back.
See Michelle and Rit.
Yeah, thanks. Wow, it was hard to believe that they could manage to come up with something more unsightly than the original, but they did.
Working hard at it.
Here's a major concern. If you recall, the city got they got the contract to do these kiosks. And once they were assigned the contract, it became in their best interest to put as many of these in as was necessary. And originally, when the presentations were made to us, they told us that in order to be efficient and in order to work, they needed to be about 150 feet apart, and that was roughly the length of a block, which maybe was 200, whatever it was. And so they were trying to put in as many of these as they could because the money was in the advertising on these. The community, our committee, went back and looked at this and actually raised the issue with them that if they staggered this, like one on one side of the street and then 100 feet on the other side of the street, and then come back to the first side of the street, and if they did that in a staggering way, they could cover the amount of footage that they needed to cover, but yet they wouldn't have to put in so many of these. And our concern was that it was a blight at the time. So certainly I can't imagine that anybody doesn't think this is a blight, because the others were, of course, much smaller. So I'm wondering if we have an opportunity here, because these are so big, and because we actually originally, if you recall, had asked them, they came to us and asked us for approval on each individual kiosk. And we said, no, we don't want to do that. We want your overall plan. Tell us what your plan is for Community Board 8. Tell us what blocks you're going to put it on, and then we'll give you an approval for a plan. But they would never do that. Some concern was that if they found a place where they felt it would be good, that the sidewalk couldn't support it, maybe there was a vault under it, or was there a bus pad, or there was some reason. Okay, but my question is, do we have an opportunity here? Because these are so much more unsightly, so much bigger, so much more of a present to actually push for an overall street design for Community Board 8, and to again ask them if they can get their adequate coverage using less of these by either staggering, as we had originally suggested, or some other method that maybe they could come up with. And I would love that to be posed to them, and in the hope that they're not coming to us with a total fait accompli. So I would just leave it in the hands of the co-chairs in the hope that you could sort of make sure that the issue is addressed when they come, if and they come before us. Thanks.
Yeah. we'll find, we just got the notice. We'll see what we can get from them, and maybe we can have an impact here, since it's hopefully in the beginning. Who knows where they are. Thanks, Michelle. Rohit had his hand up.
Thanks, Chuck. So two things. One, just building on this point about the link, it does seem to me that this is on a very fast track for approval. And so I think if the community board wants to weigh in, it's going to have to do so very fast. This is Do It behind it. It's not a private company. It's not Link coming on its own. So I think that's something that we should take under advisement, and perhaps even consider going straight to the full committee, depending on how, or the full board rather, depending on how that hearing next week goes. The other thing, just thinking about a number of the comments that we've heard about double parked trucks, I wonder, as still a relatively new member of the board, whether we as a committee have ever explored the question of loading zones. My understanding is that elsewhere DOT has done that, and it seems to me that, frankly, what we need is a lot more loading zones to deal with these double parked cars, or double parked trucks rather.
Yeah, Rohit, on that, what we were talking about, having this new unit come and look at that, that's one of the concepts that they had talked about, where you have these loading areas for some of these trucks, like, Amazon trucks, UPS trucks, Fresh Direct trucks, Target trucks, whatever. And that's something I think that's hopefully is very much in the thinking of DOT. And that's why we want to get that unit to come here. We were talking before with Colleen, to see about what they're talking about in terms of implementing something like that.
And I'll just add that we have had, not so long ago, a presentation from New York City DOT on their neighborhood loading zone program, which was piloted in other neighborhoods within Manhattan, and they are looking to expand in our district. And next month we should ask Colleen if she has any updates as far as when that is going to start to be implemented here.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder whether it would be in order for us actually to think about passing a resolution inviting them to do so. Just given how pervasive this problem is, how many people have cited it, and the fact that there really is only one way to deal with the demand for, well, two ways to deal with the demands for loading and unloading. One is to have less commerce, and the other one is to give them space to do what they need to do.
Well, it's clear we're facing unprecedented deliveries of all kinds now, and I don't think it's going to get any easier as more people order things and online. But we'll see if we can get them here at our next meeting, and we can look at. I would be in favor of the resolution.
Yeah, they were here in June of 2021, which is when we received the presentation. I don't recall us taking any action. I'm just looking now. Yeah, it was more informational in nature.
Yeah, maybe we could get them to come back next month.
Right. At that time, New York City DOT had an online tool where they were accepting community suggestions as to potential neighborhood loading zone locations. So I would imagine that we're probably nearing the time where they've digested the information and are ready to move forward with it. So we should definitely follow up with them.
Yeah. Rita Popper. Can we unmute Rita?
I just have a few questions on that tower, on the Lynx Tower. Is the top of it all lit? That white portion at the top, is that all lights?
I don't know. We'll have to see what they.
If it is,
No, I
should we have somebody?
Not a good idea if it is.
From whether the lights who are on all night, how they affect the trees that they're near, because And the other thing is that what else were they offering? Is it still a telephone, a free telephone call to any place in the world, or what? I mean, do we know?
No, we don't know.
Other than the advertising, do we know anything else that tower is going to provide?
Really, at this point, as I said, we just got this afternoon, Will sent it over. And we'll have to just investigate it and see we'd like to get them to come to the committee and go over that, do it. And the people who run these things, I forget, we've had them here, before, but your questions are all good ones and we should get the answers to those. But we don't have.
I put the link to the page that they have on it. So I would encourage everybody to go read that before asking questions that Chuck and Craig and I don't know the answers to because we received it at 3:30 this afternoon.
Right.
To defend you, Chuck.
What? Yeah. That's okay. Rebecca Dangor has spoken. Rebecca, hi. Can we unmute Rebecca?
Hi. I was just going to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Billy,
a second. Okay. And all in favor? That's a non-debatable motion. All in favor? Can we show of hands? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Well, I believe we are adjourned, and we'll proceed next month to do a lot of the things that we discussed today, and hopefully we can make some further progress. So I thank everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
The public.